Beautiful Bombs.
Welcome back for another session of Beautiful Bombs, the show where we talk about the coolest and yet least successful singles in rock music history. Let's get right to it. Today's song is
The Bangles, Everything I Wanted. Producer David Sigerson, writers Susanna Hoffs, Eric Lowen, and Dan Navarro. The Bangles made history as being, along with the Go-Go's, one of the first self-contained female rock bands to attain mainstream success. Starting out in 1981 as the Bangs, the band's scrappy, 60s worshipping aesthetic found a ready home in Los Angeles' Paisley underground scene, along with such like-minded bands as the 3 O'Clock, Dream Syndicate, and The Last. The Bangles' following grew as they transitioned from self-releases to independent record labels, and finally to the majors, signing with Columbia Records in 1984 and releasing a creative and critically praised debut album, All Over the Place. Prince then took an interest in the band and gave the group its first huge hit, Manic Monday, which kicked off a 3.5-year run of wall-to-wall hit singles. However, with success came stress and compromise. The band found itself sidelined in the studio and under pressure from record executives and producers who smoothed out their sound and sexed up their image for MTV consumption. Even so, the band's trademark harmonies and classic pop sensibilities still helped make their records among the true bright spots on radio and video in the 1980s, most notably on their stomping remake of Simon & Garfunkel's Hazy Shade of Winter. Unfortunately, by 1988, the toxicity of the music industry and poor internal communication had begun to fracture and isolate the band. While all 4 members wrote and sang, the spotlight and record label focus fell increasingly on guitarist Susanna Hoffs, creating tension that spilled over into the recording of Everything, that year's huge selling album which spawned the monster hit Eternal Flame. Despite the huge success, band morale was at an all-time low and the group acrimoniously imploded during their 1989 world tour. The title track from Everything was to have been the song Everything I Wanted, written by Susanna Hoffs along with writing and performing duo Eric Lowen and Dan Navarro. It was dropped from the album, perhaps because its straight-ahead rocking sound was at odds with the more lush production of the rest of the record. When Columbia put out a greatest hits album in 1990, the song was pulled from the vaults and featured as a newly released track. However, with the band publicly split and Susanna Hoffs about to launch a solo career, the management and label for the now-defunct group didn't see any point in pushing the new song. They didn't even bother to release it as a single in the United States. It did, however, come out in Europe and Australia, and went virtually nowhere. Had it been included on its intended parent album, Everything I Wanted would have been one of its finest tracks. With its straight-ahead Led Zeppelin-influenced guitar sound, rapid-fire melodic changes, and adventurous a cappella breakdown, Everything I Wanted synthesizes their early indie rock ethos with the best of what was good about the glossier production of their later albums. The band even expressed a hint of rebellion by sneaking an up your bum counterpoint into its complex vocal bridge. With each member of the band contributing solid vocal and instrumental work, Everything I Wanted could have been an amazing swan song for the band's initial run, if anyone cared. In 1990, nobody did.
Well, first off, for this song, I loosened the rules for the show a little bit, as this song was never released as a single in America. However, I want the focus of the show to be international, so for instance, if a song was a big hit in the UK and not in America, I'm not going to call it a bomb. And I should mention for fans of the band that within this loose definition of single that didn't do real well, there's 2 songs that are equally, if not more, worthy. Bass player Michael Steele's amazing song Following, which was a single in a little bit of a hit in Ireland, and also the band's 2003 cover of Doll Revolution by Elvis Costello. And I didn't feature those songs because Michael Steele's song, while it's incredible, is basically a solo performance, and the Doll Revolution cover is a cover. So I wanted to focus people on a song that the band wrote and also everybody participated in. And also, as a song that was on a greatest hits album, it might have flown below the radar of some fans of the band, and also, obviously, it was intended as a single, even if it was only released in Europe and Australia. So you can't really call Everything I Wanted the best thing the Bangles ever did, because pretty much all of their singles were great. But the cool thing about Everything I Wanted is there are 4 distinct parts of the song. Each one sort of takes the interest up a notch. There's not enough room to get boring. There's plenty of variation. In fact, if you listen really carefully at the end of the chorus, Michael Steele's bass part goes to a really different and interesting route before we go back to the verse. And then you've got that a cappella part, which shows the women in the band taking everything up a notch. They've always been known for their harmonies, but this is just them going, well, now we're really going to do something cool here. And also in the outro of the song, there's some really interesting little bits that are kind of buried in the mix. There's a counterpoint lead vocal section way in the background. I don't think it's Susanna Hoffs. I think it might be Michael Steele. If you know who it is, definitely put it in the comments, because I couldn't find that out. There's also a couple of other little elements back there. There's a little bit of keyboards that are added, and there's a second lead guitar part way in the background in one channel. So even though the elements of the song are very simple, it all stitches together and flows in such a cool way. It really keeps you focused, and there's just so much energy to it. There's so much heart to it. As the song that finished up their initial run, it would have been a great way to go out if anybody had really been invested enough in the song to push it. But everybody by then, including the band, were just sick of the whole deal and they'd moved on. So it's a great lost single. And in fact, in America, it wasn't even a single at all.
After their breakup, the Bangles spent many years pursuing individual interests, focusing on their personal lives and creative collaborations that brought them back to their roots. Most notably, guitarist Vicki Peterson's long stint with roots pop collective The Continental Drifters, and Susanna Hoffs' solo records and highly acclaimed cover albums with power pop genius Matthew Sweet. Happily, old wounds gradually healed, and the band came back together to contribute to the Austin Powers soundtrack in 1998. This one-off was followed by a reunion tour in 2000 and a new album, Doll Revolution, in 2003. The band was also inducted into the Vocal Group Hall of Fame and was honored by Paul McCartney at the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts. Bass player Michael Steele left the band in 2005, but this time the band continued, with my good friend Derek Anderson holding down bass duties for many years until the return of founding bassist Annette Zelinskis in 2018. The original foursome is still together and still recording and performing, now on their own terms. But whatever their incarnation, throughout their career, the Bangles consistently came out with well-realized, tuneful material that merged the best of 60s and 80s pop, and never more so than on their forgotten greatest hit that never was, Everything I Wanted, the very definition of a beautiful bomb.
So that wraps up another episode of Beautiful Bombs, and as always, I would love for you to give me your suggestions for songs that were released as singles and should have been big hits but just didn't really go anywhere. Leave them in the comments. I also want to remind you that I too am a musician, and it's hard for any musicians to get heard these days. If you like the music that you hear here, you might enjoy some of the things I've been involved with. Check the first comment for that, along with a link to today's featured song. And that's it for this episode of Beautiful Bombs. Stay tuned, there's more coming.
Beautiful bomb.